The use of cluster bombs in the Ukraine war has led to hundreds of civilian casualties. That's according to a global report that's out today. Cluster munitions are considered illegal by most countries. The Cluster Munition Monitor report says that at least 689 people have been killed or wounded by cluster bombs in Ukraine, almost all of them civilians. The report says that Russia has used cluster bombs extensively, investigating hundreds of such attacks. It also says that Ukrainian forces appear to have used cluster munitions at least 3 times. Since 2008, an international agreement banning the use of cluster munitions has gained 110 signatories, including Germany. But Russia and Ukraine, as well as the United States and a number of other countries, have refused to sign. I'll speak to one of the authors of that report in a moment. But first, let's have a closer look at what cluster bombs are and what they do.
Cluster munitions from the ground. Beyond the explosions, watch and listen carefully to what happens next. Small, dangerous objects continue to rain down. Bigger ones, too. They're brutally lethal weapons. From the air, this animation from an NGO working against cluster munitions offers a look. The bombs release smaller explosive submunitions in flight. The submunitions are meant to blow up on impact with enemy soldiers or enemy vehicles. If not the enemy, civilians. Hundreds of bomblets spread out over the hit zone. And activists say over 90% of cluster bomb deaths are civilians. Earlier this month, DW looked into an alleged Russian cluster bomb strike at this children's hospital in Ukraine, holding 237 kids.
The ammunition parts were everywhere. Fortunately, there had been an air raid alarm before the cluster attack, so the children were in the basement. If not, we could have had 237 deaths.
NGOs warn that the tiny bomblets that don't explode immediately can look like a plaything to a child. Or they might rest like landmines in urban spaces or farm fields for weeks, months, years after the main projectile has been hauled away.
Marianne Loddo is co-editor of the Cluster Munitions Monitor 2022, published today, and she joins me now from Geneva. Marianne, why would an army resort to the use of cluster bomb? What's the military advantage here?
At the Cluster Munition Coalition, we don't see any military advantage to such weapons. They are indiscriminate, which means that they cannot differentiate between civilians and military. They just kill children going in the field. They kill people using their land, going to work, going to schools. They prevent them to access basic services. So there is clearly no military needs, and that's why we have a convention banning those weapons since 2008.
Now, you say in your report that the Russian army has been using cluster munitions extensively in Ukraine, and that the Ukrainian army also appears to have used those bombs in 3 cases. Why are you so certain about the Russians using these bombs, but not the Ukrainians?
I mean, it takes time to verify information, and there is also the fact that Russia has been using that weapon extensively, hundreds of attacks, so we have lots of evidence. Then we need to take time to verify all those evidence to make sure that what we are reporting is as accurate as possible. But this is basically linked to that. It means that Russia has been extensively using that weapon in the conflict in the past 6 months, whereas Ukraine has had limited use of that weapon.
You talked about the investigating that you do. Is it easy for you to get access when you investigate those attacks?
No, it takes time for sure. And I should mention that at the Cluster Munition Monitor, we are working with different organizations, and Human Rights Watch has the lead on such questions on use. And basically, we are relying on different types, of information, such as direct interviews with witnesses from cluster munition attacks, videos, photos. Social media has been extremely used as well in that conflict. We can also use satellite imagery and other, impact in the street of such weapons. We can identify and see if it is actually a cluster munition attack or not. So it takes time. You need to make sure that the photos that you are, analyzing is right and is not a setup. But with time and commitment and energy, you can do the work.
Now, can you explain why some countries like Russia and Ukraine, but also the US, are not committed to banning the use of cluster munition?
I mean, they consider that those weapons are useful, but as I mentioned earlier, we believe those weapons are simply indiscriminate. They are banned, and we are working to make sure that as many countries as possible are joining the convention, and that's why as well that since there's been this use of cluster munition in Ukraine, lots of states have spoken out and to said that using those weapons is illegal and should never happen anywhere and at any time. So we just have to continue to make sure that all the states that are remaining outside of the convention are joining as soon as possible.
Marion Lodder there, co-editor of this year's report on the use of cluster munitions. Thank you very much, Marion.
Thank you.